Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show, and I've got one of my favorite guests, and Ewan Downie, on today. Ewan and I are going to talk about reasons that we see gold is going a lot higher. Then we'll also talk about what makes i-80 Gold, his company, such a compelling story. Ewan, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Alan. I look forward to today's conversation.
So you and the other yesterday, in resounding fashion, they passed they raised the debt limit. Who thought they wouldn't, but they did, and we got some good things to talk about.
Yeah, it's once again, I think government's just looking at debt as being something that just crumbles or just comes out of thin air. If you look at a company, if a company were to run itself like a government where you're so far in debt, you're nearly bankrupt, but let's add some more debt to that, it won't be too long before that company is bankrupt. And most people, I think, don't look at it that way. It's almost like we become so accustomed to governments around the world, not the ones who produce lots of oil and they run surpluses and there's no taxes to their citizens, but we're not going to get into that one today. But the countries who are sort of going to this more socialist type environment are going further and further into debt. And like I said, if a company did that, it wouldn't be around very long. So most people, I don't think are really seeing the real narrative that's going on behind the scenes. And I think gold is going to be a major benefactor over the next couple of years.
As we were preparing for this show, it reminded me of a famous saying by one of the most famous economic and investors. He said that compounding interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Well, all of this debt is the opposite effect. He was talking about 8% annual growth in your money, how it could make you a millionaire in a short period of time, starting with a small amount of money. These countries and consumers are doing the exact opposite. They are running into the eighth death wonder of the world, because that's an economic killer, what's going on right now.
Yeah, it's crazy. And just if you look at the amount that it takes to service that debt, today it's nearly a $1 trillion a year in capital is required in servicing that debt. The government needs to put up $1 trillion a year just to service their current debt. And that's climbing. It's nearly doubled in the last several years. The slide you're showing here, another good example of bad government policy or economic policy is Canada. The Trudeau government, in just 7 years since it has come to power, has more than doubled Canadian debt. That's an astounding figure. And then you look at now, the interest rates are going up. As interest rates go up, the servicing of that debt just increases. And the Trudeau Liberal government inherited a balanced budget, but I guess that's what you get when you have a prime minister and a minister of finance without any economic experience and or education, is they really don't see the logic and why would you want to not have debt. And our budget this year in Canada was just another bad example of that. The other thing that I think point out, the previous slide that you showed, is I think a really important one. We're seeing right now a bit of a reserve currency war going on behind the scenes. The US dollar is being challenged by other currencies. The BRICS nations, as you might call it, with Russia, China, and others, is definitely challenging or threatening of not using the US dollar. And the first slide that you showed shows that the foreign countries are buying less and less of the US, this slide here. So if you look at only 10 years ago, 34% of the US treasuries were held by foreign holders. That would be China and Russia and lots of other countries. And what we're seeing now is these countries are actually selling their US dollars, their treasuries, and they're buying gold. Last year was a record year of central bank buying gold.
And
This is,
2023 is shaping up to be even bigger.
yes, it's truly a shift in currencies. And the countries who are buying gold, I think, see that what fiat money is just not what I think people expect. I want to show you a little example. Here's a $50 bill. Just think of what a $50 bill bought you 10 years ago and what it does today, especially with the inflation we're seeing today. This is becoming more and more worthless with every day that we go by. And putting on debt is going to make it worse. Now,
You can't even take your wife out for a nice dinner on $50.
no, not a chance. But here's an ounce of gold, and it just happens to be an i-80 ounce of gold. This ounce of gold 10 years ago was worth between $1,200 and $1,400. Today, it's been creeping on and it's sitting right around 2,000. This has gone up in value. This continues to go down in value.
And the US is just as bad as Canada. They're devaluing the purchasing power of their US dollar just as quickly.
Yeah, and look at the price of fuel in Canada, and now Canada tags on a carbon tax. We're going to soon be paying as much tax on fuel as it costs to buy a US gallon here in Canada. So it's crazy. The governments are fueling this inflation, and they're sitting there going, well, what's going wrong? We got to up interest to fix this. No, they don't. There's other means to fix it. But
Ewan, you make a good point there. Like, if I was doing international trade, why in hell would I want to do it in US dollars? I'd rather do it in gold. I'd rather sell commodities in the international trade market and get back gold than US dollars.
exactly. So I'm fully of the opinion that this year we are going to see all-time highs in the gold price. And when we see all-time highs, we're going to see continued growth in interest in the gold companies. We've cracked close to all-time highs this year and dropped back. There hasn't been a real euphoria in the gold sector like we've seen in other years, but I believe that it won't be too far in the future when we hit an all-time high and we just keep going from there. And the interest in gold stocks is going to go parabolic. And when it goes parabolic, the US generalist funds are going to be the biggest driver of what's going to happen to the stocks. When every big US fund decides we need to allocate 5% or 10% of all of our holdings into gold because it is a safety net, like 5-10% is pretty low. But even if they went that quantum, there'd be such a huge increase in the demand for gold that the gold price will continue to climb. And in that type of environment, historically, the gold stocks then catch a real bid and they significantly outperform the gold price. So I think that's what we're going to see in the second half of this year and going into 2024. And the companies that will benefit the most from that, I think, especially that big US fund demand, will be companies who trade on the US stock exchange. And i-80 is one of the few companies in the gold sector that trades in the US stock exchange. Then another thing that will really be looked at generalists, because they don't really look at the gold sector and say, I understand it. They're like, which stocks do I own and why? And if you're looking at it for a safety net, then you'll start to look at, well, what companies are producing in safe jurisdictions. And Nevada's ranked #1 by the Fraser Institute. We're 100% Nevada focused, and we're 100% US gold producing. So if you look at companies that are US only gold companies, that list of companies to buy shrinks even further. And then the next one will be which companies produce only in the United States. And I believe we are the only one. So there's a lot of reasons I think that we're going to see the gold price increase. And with that, you'll see companies like i-80 have very strong second halves of this year. So I think that was kind of what we were here to chat about.
Well, there's one other point that, Ewan, is that you guys have now been accepted into the Russell index. And
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. That's a pretty major catalyst for our company this year as well. At the end of this month, i-80 Gold will be included, or is expected to be included, in the Russell 3000. The Russell 3000 is a major index when it comes to US companies. It carries a certain weighting of all the US companies, and us now being a US focused company with a US listing, we're one of, I think, only 3 or 4 mining companies being included this year. And we expect that to have volume buying in our stock here in later in June in the amount of what could be 20-30 million shares. So that kind of buying into a stock like ours usually has a very positive effect. So getting listed in the Russell 3000 is, I think, a big catalyst for us here, happening later this month.
And I think that these catalysts are all going to come together, gold moving up, you getting accepted into the index, and all your work that you guys are doing that will generate great news flow for the foreseeable future.
For sure, yeah, there's a lot going on with our company, numerous drill programs, underground development at 2 of our projects, increasing gold production. So I'm sure we'll be talking a lot more in the coming weeks as we start to release more results, and it's always good to be on your show, Al.
You got to show that i-80 Gold coin again.
So on this side, we have our company symbol, i-80 Gold Corp. It has the 13 stripes from the flag and 52 stars surrounding it.
Oh, wow.
And then the back is Nevada with the same thing.
That tells the story right there. Ewan focused in Nevada, focused in the United States.
Yeah.
I know you're busy, Ewan. I better let you go, or at least close up, and you can listen in if you have time.
Okay, sounds good.
So Ewan did a great job of making the argument. There's compelling reasons to believe that gold's going to go up. I think it's a perfect storm, and we're going to see gold much higher this year, next year, and for the foreseeable future. But then generalist funds coming into as Ewan was saying, generalist investors are going to look for that US listing, the US focus, and the index, inclusion in the index. So there's a bunch of catalysts on the gold price, on generalist and funders, investors getting involved. And then you've got this litany of great projects that i-80 Gold has the assets to grow them into a 400,000 ounce per ton a year, or 4,000 ounce gold producer a year with a tremendous growth profile and good economics. Those are the things that also drive value. So I've called i-80 Gold a cornerstone holding for a long time. I believe strongly in that. And I also believe strongly that they've got the assets to grow this into a multi-billion-dollar company that is currently trading at a $700 million valuation. It's a cornerstone holding. Do your homework, go to their website, look at all of our past interviews. And I think as you do that, you'll understand why I think it's a cornerstone holding for people that want access or investments into gold that will outperform their peers and the price of gold. On that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.